Veltar looked at the young soldiers sitting around his table. Their purple scales shined bright under the cantina lights. They were so young, so sure they knew everything about war. He remembered being like that once, before the humans showed him what real fighting looked like. "You want to know about humans?" Veltar asked, his voice rough from years of battle. "It's fine, but don't blame me when you can't sleep tonight." The cantina noise faded as other aliens stopped their conversations to listen. Everyone knew Veltar's reputation. He was the only Nexorian to survive 3 different human battles and live to tell about it. "It was 7 years ago," Veltar began, slowly rotating his glass between 2 of his hands. "The Galactic Council sent our 7th Fleet to take control of the Kepler system. Intelligence said it was just a small human colony with maybe 1,000 people. Scientists, farmers, children, easy target." A young recruit leaned forward. "What happened? What happened?" Veltar's laugh was bitter. "We learned that human intelligence reports mean nothing. What we thought was a simple farming colony was actually a military research base. But that wasn't the worst part." Veltar paused, touching the scar where his left eye used to be. "The worst part was discovering that even if it had been just farmers, it wouldn't have mattered. Humans don't fight like us. They don't fight like anyone else in the galaxy." The recruits exchanged glances. One of them, braver than the rest, spoke up. "Come on, veteran. They're just mammals. It's no armor, no natural weapons. How dangerous could they be?" Veltar's mandibles clicked in what might have been amusement. "That's exactly what Admiral Zethkal said when we dropped out of hyperspace above Kepler 438b. Just mammals, he called them. This will be over in an hour." The old warrior's voice grew distant as he remembered. "We had 80 warships, state-of-the-art plasma weapons, energy shields, the best troops in the galaxy. The humans had 12 old transport ships and a space station that looked like it was built from spare parts." "So you won easily?" asked another recruit. "You should have," Veltar said. "Our first mistake was thinking like Nexorians. We announced our presence, gave them time to surrender. It's the honorable thing to do, right? Give your enemy a chance to save their lives." Veltar's remaining eye grew dark. "But humans don't think about saving their lives. They think about making you pay for every inch of space you take from them." The cantina had grown completely quiet now. Even the bartender had stopped cleaning glasses to listen. Their commander, a human named Captain Lee Minho, responded to our surrender demand with 4 words: "Come and take it." Then their broken space station suddenly came alive with weapons we didn't even know existed. Veltar took another drink, his hands shaking slightly. "Those transport ships? They weren't transports. They were disguised warships. Yeah, we were busy laughing at their pathetic defenses. They were moving into attack formation." "But you still outnumbered them," protested a recruit. "Numbers don't matter when your enemy doesn't care about dying," Veltar replied. "The first human ship to attack us was called the Soul Pride. It was half the size of our smallest cruiser, but it flew straight at our flagship like it was trying to ram us." The veteran's voice grew quieter. "Captain Park Soo-jin was piloting that ship. We found out later she was a mother of 3. Her family was on the station we were trying to capture. She flew her ship right into our plasma fire, knowing she was going to die." "That's just suicide," one recruit said dismissively. "No," Veltar said firmly. "That's tactics." While we were focused on her ship, thinking we had an easy kill, she was painting targets for the rest of her fleet. Every shot we fired at her told the other human ships exactly where our weapons were. The old warrior's scarred face showed pain as he continued. "The Soul Pride didn't just ram us. Captain Park waited until the last possible second, then ejected her ship's power core right into our engine bay. The explosion took out 3 of our cruisers and crippled our flagship." "But that's impossible," stammered a recruit. "Ship cores can't be ejected that quickly." "Human engineers had modified every ship in their fleet," Veltar explained. "They spent months preparing for this battle, turning their own vessels into weapons. Captain Park's sacrifice wasn't random. It was planned." The cantina was so quiet, you could hear the hum of the station's life support systems. "The battle lasted 6 hours," Veltar continued. 6 hours of the most vicious fighting I've ever seen. The humans lost every single ship, but they took 47 of ours with them. 47 ships, each with a crew of 300. And the space station? Asked the bartender who had been listening from behind the bar. Veltar's mandibles clicked grimly. That's where the real nightmare began. The end. Veltar's remaining eyes stared into the distance as he remembered that terrible day. The young recruits leaned closer, their earlier bravado completely gone. After we lost most of our fleet in space, Admiral Zethkal ordered a ground assault on the human station. Veltar continued. We still had 15,000 troops. The humans had maybe 300 people left alive on that station. Should have been easy, right? The veteran warrior picked up his glass with a shaking hand. We started our attack at sunrise. Our plasma cannons lit up the station's shields like fireworks. Command told us the shields would fail in 10 minutes. Then we'd go in and finish the job. One of the recruits shifted nervously, but they didn't fail. Oh, they failed all right, Veltar said with a bitter laugh. After 6 hours of constant bombardment. 6 hours. Our intelligence said those shields could only last 20 minutes under that kind of fire. The old soldier's mandibles clicked as he remembered. Turns out the humans had been working all night, rerouting power from every system on the station. Life support, artificial gravity, even their food processors. Everything was feeding power to those shields. So they were just delaying the inevitable. Suggested a recruit. That's what we thought too, Veltar replied. But humans don't just delay, they prepare. While we were pounding their shields, they were turning their home into a death trap. The cantina had grown so quiet that everyone could hear the hum of the air recyclers. Veltar took a long drink before continuing. The first thing we noticed when we breached the outer hull was the smell. Not the usual station air, but something else. Something that made our breathing filters work overtime. Poison gas? The bartender, worse, Veltar said. They had flooded the entire first level with a chemical compound that ate through our armor. Not quickly, but steady. Every minute we stayed in there, our equipment got weaker. The veteran's voice dropped. Lower. Dr. Kim Suman, their chief scientist, had turned their chemistry lab into a weapon factory. While we were bombarding them from outside, she was cooking up ways to kill us from inside. But you had environmental suits, protested one recruit. Environmental suits don't help when the humans have figured out how to turn the station's ventilation system into a weapon, Veltar replied grimly. Every air vent became a gun barrel. Every maintenance tunnel became an ambush point. Veltar touched his scarred face again. I lost my eye on level 3. We were clearing what looked like an empty medical bay. Standard procedure, you know. 2 teams, cover all angles, secure the room. The recruits were hanging on every word now. The room was empty, all right, except for Dr. Park Jin-woo hiding in the ceiling. He'd been up there for hours, waiting. My squad walked underneath. He dropped down with a surgical laser in each hand. A surgical laser? One recruit asked. Those are medical tools. Tell that to my eye, Veltar said darkly. In the right hands, medical tools become weapons. Dr. Park took out 4 of my warriors before we even knew what was happening. We finally cornered him. He was bleeding from 6 different wounds and still fighting. The old warrior paused, his voice growing softer. You know what he said to me while I was trying to stop my eye from bleeding? He said, I'm sorry about your... Nothing personal. Then he handed me a bandage from his medical kit. That's strange, admitted a recruit. That's humans, Veltar corrected. They'll kill you without hesitation if you threaten their people, but they'll also try to patch you up afterward if they can. The veteran continued his story, his voice growing more intense. By the end of the first day, we'd lost 800 troops just getting to level 5. Every corridor was a nightmare. Motion sensors triggered explosions. Automatic doors had been turned into crushing traps. Even the water fountains had been weaponized. How do you weaponize a water fountain? Asked a young soldier. Fill it with acid and rig it to spray when someone walks by, Veltar answered matter-of-factly. The humans had 3 weeks to prepare, remember? 3 weeks to think of every possible way to make us suffer. The cantina patrons were all listening. Now, even the tough-looking mercenaries at the back tables. The worst part wasn't the traps. Veltar continued. It was their tactics. Normal soldiers fight from fortified positions. They dig in and defend. Humans don't do that. They attack. While defending? What do you mean? Asked the bartender. I mean, while half of them were shooting at us from the front, the other half were crawling through maintenance shafts, coming up behind us, Veltar explained. Engineer Li Hyan-Su spent 2 days crawling through ducts that were barely wide, enough for a human body, planting explosives behind our forward positions. The veteran's voice cracked slightly. When we finally caught him, both his legs were broken from a fall 3 levels up. He'd been dragging himself through those ducts on his hands for hours, leaving a trail of blood, still planting bombs. Did he surrender? Asked a recruit quietly. Veltar's laugh was hollow. When we cornered him in a maintenance junction, surrounded by 30 armed warriors, you know what he did? He smiled at us and said, "My turn to play." Then he triggered every explosive he'd planted over the past 2 days. The cantina fell silent except for the distant hum of machinery. The explosion brought down 3 levels of the station, Veltar whispered, killed 200 of our troops, and opened the entire section to space. Li Hyan-Su died in that explosion, but he took more of us with him than most entire armies manage. Veltar's hands trembled as he reached for his drink. The young recruits noticed his sudden change in mood. Even the toughest veterans in the cantina had gone quiet, sensing that the worst part of the story was coming. By the 3rd week, we thought we were winning, Veltar said, his voice barely above a whisper. We'd taken most of the station. The humans were down to maybe 50 people, all wounded, all trapped in the medical bay on level 7. He paused, staring at the table. That's when I learned that wounded humans are more dangerous than healthy ones. A recruit shifted nervously. What do you mean? I mean, we found out that pain doesn't stop humans. It makes them angry, Veltar replied. We captured 12 wounded humans that day. Thought they'd be easy to interrogate, maybe get some information about their defenses. The veterans remaining, I grew distant. The first prisoner we brought in was Sergeant Choi Jin-ho. He'd been caught in an explosion that brought down half a corridor. When we pulled him from the wreckage, his arms were twisted at impossible angles. His skull was cracked so bad we could see brain fluid leaking out. Several recruits looked uncomfortable, but they kept listening. Our medic said he'd be dead within the hour, Veltar continued. Internal bleeding, massive head trauma, both arms completely shattered. So we just tied him to a chair with basic restraints and waited for him to die. But he didn't die, guessed the bartender. No, he didn't, Veltar confirmed. 2 hours later, our guards went to check on him. Restraints were gone. So was Sergeant Choi. The cantina was dead silent now. We found blood trails leading from the interrogation room into the ventilation system, Veltar said. This human, with 2 broken arms and a fractured skull, had somehow chewed through military-grade restraints and crawled into the ducts. That's impossible, protested a young soldier. That's what we thought too, Veltar replied grimly, until we found Guard Captain Veximer and 2 of his men dead in the corridor outside, all 3 killed with a medical scalpel. A scalpel that was still clenched between Sergeant Choi's teeth when we finally cornered him. The recruits exchanged horrified glances. When we found him, he was 3 levels away from where we'd left him, trying to crawl back to the human medical bay through an air duct barely wide enough for his body, Veltar continued. There was a trail of his own blood behind him, but he was still moving, still trying to get back to his unit. What did you do? Asked one recruit quietly. We shot him, Veltar said simply. It took 6 plasma bolts to finally stop him. Even then, he kept trying to crawl forward until the very end. The old warrior took a long drink before continuing. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was Dr. Han Yunji, their medic, asked the bartender. Their head of medical, Veltar corrected. We found her in the medical bay, trying to treat wounded humans while under constant fire. Been shot in the leg by one of our snipers? Blast had completely severed her leg below the knee. The recruits were listening with horrified fascination now. Any normal person would have gone into shock, passed out from blood loss, Veltar explained. Dr. Han looked down at her severed leg, picked up a surgical laser, and started operating on herself. Operating on herself? repeated a recruit in disbelief. Cauterizing the wound, stopping the bleeding, even fashioning a tourniquet from medical tubing, Veltar said, all while directing her medical team to treat other wounded humans. She never stopped working, never stopped giving orders. The veteran's voice cracked slightly. Our snipers kept shooting at the medical bay. Dr. Han took 2 more hits, one in the shoulder, one in the stomach. She was bleeding out, obviously dying, but she kept working. We could hear her over the communication channels, Veltar continued. Even as she was dying, she was coordinating evacuation procedures for the civilian families on the station. Her last words weren't about her pain or her fear. They were tactical updates for her surviving team. The cantina was so quiet that everyone could hear the station's life support humming in the background. She died while performing surgery on another wounded human, Veltar whispered, just collapsed over the operating table. But even after she died, the other humans kept following. Her last orders, every instruction she'd given them, they carried out perfectly. How do you fight people like that? Asked a young recruit, his voice shaking. You don't fight them, Veltar answered. You try to survive them long enough to understand what you're really dealing with. The old warrior looked around the table, at the young faces staring back at him. The thing about humans is that they don't see themselves as individuals. They see themselves as part of something bigger. Dr. Han didn't die for herself. She died for her patients, for her team, for people she'd never even met. That's madness, whispered one recruit. No, Veltar corrected firmly. That's what makes them the most dangerous species in the galaxy. They'll sacrifice everything for each other. And when you hurt one of them, the rest never forget. The veteran finished his drink and stood up slowly, his 6 arms moving with the careful precision of someone who'd survived too many battles. You want my advice? He asked the young soldiers. Pray you never have to fight humans, because if you do, you'd better kill every single one of them, because the ones who survive will hunt you to the ends of the galaxy. Veltar set his empty glass down with a heavy thud. The young recruits around him had stopped fidgeting, stopped looking around the cantina. Their full attention was on the scarred veteran who had lived through humanity's darkest hour. After 4 weeks of fighting, we thought it was over, Veltar said, his voice so quiet that everyone had to lean in to hear him. We'd taken 90% of the station. The humans were trapped in the central core with nowhere to run. He paused, running one of his clawed hands across his scarred face. 12 humans left. 12 out of the 300 who started this fight. They had no ammunition, no power, no way to call for help. Any sane species would have surrendered. Humans aren't sane, guessed one of the recruits. No, they're not, Veltar agreed. Admiral Zethkal decided to offer them one last chance. He opened a communication channel to their leader, Captain Park Donghayan, expected to hear a surrender request, maybe a plea for mercy. The veteran's mandibles clicked slowly as he remembered. Instead, Captain Park's voice came over every speaker on every ship in our fleet. Clear as crystal, calm as a morning breeze. Said, Admiral, this is Captain Park. We have a message for you. The cantina was dead silent, even the background. Music had stopped. The Admiral asked what message they wanted to send home to their families, Veltar continued. Captain Park laughed. Actually laughed. And he said, we don't have a message for our families. We have a message for you. We die here today, but we die as humans. And when humans die fighting, they take their enemies with them. Remember that, eh? Chill ran through the room. Several aliens shifted uncomfortably in their seats. That's when we knew this wasn't going to be a simple surrender, Veltar said. The Admiral ordered 400 of our elite troops to take the core. Our best warriors. Fresh from reserve, fully armed and armored. The old soldier's voice grew even quieter. I was leading the first assault team. When the blast doors opened, we expected to find 12 broken humans cowering in the corner, begging for their lives. But that's not what you found, said the bartender, who had abandoned all pretense of working to listen to the story. No, Veltar replied. We found 12 humans standing in formation, weapons ready. But these weren't the same weapons they'd been using for weeks. They'd improvised new ones from the station's equipment. He held up one of his hands, showing old scars across the palm. Dr. Kim Yujin had created some kind of acid thrower from laboratory equipment. It ate through our armor like it was paper. Sergeant Lee. Wusong had turned a gravity generator into a weapon that could crush a warrior's shell from 20 meters away. The recruits were listening with horrified fascination. The most terrifying thing wasn't their weapons. Veltar continued, it was their faces. They weren't afraid. They weren't angry. Were peaceful. Like they'd already accepted their fate and made peace with it. That doesn't make sense, protested a young soldier. How can you be peaceful when you're about to die? Because they weren't thinking about dying, Veltar explained. They were thinking about living. Every second they kept fighting was another second for any civilian survivors to escape. Every warrior they took down was one less threat to their families. The veteran's voice grew stronger as he continued. Captain Park raised his hand and all 12 humans charged us at the same time. No battle cry, no roar of rage. Just silent, determined humans running straight into 400 armed aliens. The battle lasted 7 minutes, Veltar said, his voice filled with amazement even years later. 7 minutes. 12 humans against 400 of the galaxy's finest warriors. He pointed to various scars on his arms and chest. Sergeant Kim Yujin had a piece of metal rebar sticking completely through her chest. It had pierced her lung, but she kept fighting. Used the rebar like a spear, spinning and striking at anyone who got close. That's medically impossible, said one recruit. Tell that to the 20 warriors she took down before she finally collapsed, Veltar replied grimly. Private Kong Wusong lost his left arm to a plasma blast in the first minute of fighting. Know what he did? He picked up his severed arm and used it as a club until he could grab a proper weapon. The cantina patrons were staring and horrified. Silence. Engineer Park Minho turned their remaining power core into a bomb, Veltar continued. Not to destroy the station, but to create an electromagnetic pulse that disabled half our equipment. He died in the explosion, but suddenly 40 of our warriors were fighting blind with dead weapons. How many did you lose? Asked the bartender. Quietly. 60 warriors killed or wounded, Veltar answered. 60 of our best, taken down by 12 dying humans with improvised weapons. The veteran stood up slowly, his movements careful and deliberate. When the last human fell, when Captain Park finally stopped moving, the silence was the loudest thing I'd ever heard. 4,000 warriors standing in the ruins of a human station, and nobody spoke for 10 full minutes because you'd won? Suggested a recruit. Veltar's laugh was bitter. Because we realized we hadn't won anything. We just learned what humans were capable of. And we knew that somewhere out there were billions more just like them. Veltar stood up from his chair, his 6 arms stretching as he looked around. The now silent cantina. Every alien in the room was staring at him, waiting for the end of his story. The young recruits who had been so confident hours ago now looked pale and shaken. So what happened next? Asked one recruit, his voice barely. Above a whisper, Veltar's remaining eye focused on the young soldier. What happened next changed the entire galaxy, he said. Within hours of the battle ending, news of what the humans had done spread to every corner of space. The old warrior began pacing slowly around the table. Admiral Zethkal sent his report. To the Galactic Council, he was supposed to report a successful conquest, a new slave species ready for exploitation. Instead, he recommended immediate peace negotiations. Peace negotiations? Asked the bartender. After they'd just fought a war? Because of how they fought the war, Veltar explained. The council had conquered hundreds of species over the centuries. Some fought bravely, some surrendered quickly, some begged for mercy. But humans were different. He paused, touching the scar where his eye used to be. 300 humans had held off 15,000 of our best warriors for 4 weeks. They'd destroyed 80% of our fleet and killed thousands of our soldiers. But more importantly, they'd shown us something we'd never seen before. What was that? Asked a recruit. They showed us what it meant to fight for something bigger than yourself, Veltar said. Every other species we'd conquered fought for their own lives, their own freedom. Humans fought for each other. They fought for people they'd never met, for future generations, for ideas and principles. The cantina remained deadly quiet. as Veltar continued his story. The Galactic Council met in emergency session 3 days after the battle, he said. They had to decide what to do about humanity. Some wanted to send more fleets to crush them completely. Others wanted to negotiate. What did they decide? Asked the bartender. They decided to send Ambassador Crystal to meet with human leaders, Veltar replied. Not to demand surrender, but to offer alliance. Several aliens in the cantina looked shocked. Alliance? One of them asked. With a species you'd just been at war with? Because we realized that humans as enemies would destroy us, Veltar explained. But humans as allies could help us survive anything. The old warrior's voice grew stronger as he continued. The first human delegation to the Galactic Council was led by Captain Park Dong-hyeon himself. The same human who had promised to take us down with him, now sitting at the negotiation table. Weren't you afraid of him? Asked a recruit. Veltar laughed, but it was a warm sound this time. Terrified. I was part of the security detail for those negotiations. I kept expecting him to pull out some hidden weapon and start fighting again. But he didn't, guessed the bartender. No, he didn't, Veltar confirmed. Instead, he did something even more surprising. He asked about our wounded. He wanted to know if our medical teams needed help treating the soldiers who'd been injured. In the battle, the cantina erupted in surprised murmurs. He wanted to help treat your wounded, asked one patron. That's humans for you, Veltar said. They'll fight you to the death if you threaten their people. But once the fighting stops, they want to help heal the wounds. The veteran returned to his seat, his movements more relaxed now. Those peace. Negotiations lasted 3 months. By the end, we weren't just signing a treaty, we were creating a new kind of alliance.
What kind of alliance?
Asked a recruit. The kind where humans serve alongside alien warriors in mixed units, Veltar explained. Where human engineers work with our scientists to build better ships. Where human medics treat wounded aliens, and alien doctors save human lives, he gestured. Around the cantina? This station we're on right now? Was designed by human engineers working with Nexorian architects. The life support systems are based on human atmospheric technology. Defensive systems combine human tactics with our weapons. But how do you trust them? Asked one of the recruits. After what they did to your fleet? Veltar's mandibles clicked in what might have been amusement. That's exactly why we trust them, because we know what they're capable of. When humans make a promise, they keep it. When they swear loyalty, they mean it. Around the room, Captain Park Dong-hyeon now commands the flagship Resilience in the combined fleet. Dr. Kim Soo-min, the same scientist who turned chemistry into warfare, now leads our joint research into medical technology. Engineer Lee Hyansu, who spent days crawling through ducts to plant explosives, now designs our defensive systems. They're okay with working with former enemies? Asked the bartender. I asked Captain Park that same question, Veltar replied. He looked at me like I was crazy. He said, Commander, we weren't fighting you because we hated you. We were fighting you because you were trying to hurt our people. Now that we're on the same side, you are our people. The cantina fell silent. As everyone absorbed these words, that's the thing about humans, Veltar continued. They don't hold grudges. They don't fight for revenge. They fight to protect. And once you're on their side, they'll protect you with the same determination they once used to fight you. Old warrior stood up again, signaling that his story was coming to an end. So here's my advice to all of you young soldiers. If you ever find yourself fighting alongside humans, count yourself lucky. They'll never abandon you, never give up on you, never stop fighting for you. If you ever find yourself fighting against humans, asked one recruit quietly. Veltar's remaining, I grew serious. Then pray to whatever gods you believe in that the war ends quickly. Because humans don't just fight battles, they fight for causes, and they never, ever give up. As the veteran gathered his things and prepared to leave, one final question came. From the back of the room, do you regret fighting them? I regret that we had to fight at all. I'll never regret learning what humans are truly capable of. Because now I know that as long as humans are our allies, there's no enemy in the galaxy that can defeat us. The old warrior walked out into the corridor, leaving behind a room full of aliens who would never again underestimate the small, seemingly fragile species called humanity. The end.